Hello guys, the AP Top 25 released today, and I just want to give my reaction to it real quick. This is a few hours after it already released, and I'm just going to be going over a few of them. It's not going to be too in-depth. I am posting a lot of videos this week, so stay tuned for that. But anyways, here's a quick rundown of it. Let's see if they got it right or not. Texas, I think they deserve to be number one. You could make a case for a lot of teams, any of these teams inside these top five, and maybe even extending beyond that, you can make a case for number one. But I think it's Texas. Obviously, the hype is around Arch Manning. Last year, I felt like they were a national championship level team with all the returning talent. And the only thing holding them back, it seemed like, was quarterback play. Even though Ewers has a very good college career, and I'm not dissing him in any way, a lot of Texas fans felt like he held the team back, and he did have some costly turnovers. And whenever Arch Manning went in there, he did very good. And this year, Texas returns a lot of talent. The offensive line's a little bit of a question mark, but they have the potential to be even better at wide receiver this year. They return a very good running back. They got Arch Manning, obviously, and that defense is going to be possibly even better. They got a really good secondary, and that defensive line could be the best in the country. I feel like this team is very good, and the sky's the limit. Penn State, number two, pretty deserving. I'm going to make a video in depth about them in the next coming weeks, if you guys want to stay tuned for that. But it's all going to come down to James Franklin and Drew Aller. The team around them is so much better. The problems with their team when they were consistently two-loss teams or second fiddle in the Big Ten, a lot of them have been fixed now because they fixed the receiver room. They got 3 transfer wide receivers who are all really good. They got one of the best offensive lines in the country now returning. And they need to be more creative with their systems because now they have talents to be more explosive with their offense. And maybe we'll not see so much of those wildcat plays now that they have that talent. And now all you need is Drew Aller, the quarterback. I do not have faith in Drew Aller. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's shown that he's not very trustworthy, but if he can be very good, that offense is explosive. I don't need to remind you guys that if Penn State's offense is explosive, then you don't need to worry about their defense either because their defense is locked and loaded. I think this is deserving. Ohio State number 3, I think is a bit overrated because last year, I know Michigan and Ohio State aren't the same, but Michigan was the defending national champs last year. They added some transfers, but not the greatest transfer class compared to the rest of the top guys, kind of like Ohio State. I don't think their transfer class was good enough to replace a bunch of their talent leaving. And then Michigan is ranked number 9. Ohio State's number 3. Why? They don't have a returning quarterback. They have a redshirt freshman quarterback, and we don't even know who it is. They lose a bunch of talent there. And yes, I know they're not going to be as bad as last year's Michigan team. And I know that they do have talent. I feel like the only reason why they're ranked this high is because of their stars. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, if it wasn't for them, that offense would just be really good and not national championship level contender possibly. He's going to bail them out and maybe add a few wins to their team. Same with their defense. They got Caleb Downs, but without him, nothing really stands out. That defensive line is going to struggle, and we know Ohio State struggles when they have bad play in the trenches. I think they're a bit overrated, but I still think they can be really good. 5 is Georgia. Obviously, they can be really good. They have talent. We'll see if their new quarterback can be good. It's all going to depend on that. They lost some talent, but they obviously reloaded. It's the same story every year. I guess number 5 is a fair ranking. But I also feel like, obviously, Georgia loses a lot of talent and they gain a lot of talent, a lot of new faces too. So it could go either way. I feel like 5 is a little bit appropriate. 6 is Notre Dame. I feel like this is appropriate too because even though they have a lot of really good talent, they don't have like any Heisman talent besides Jeremiah Love. But in this college football landscape, you can just have a bunch of returning guys who are pretty good and then add a few transfers to that and good coaching, which Notre Dame has. And you can be right up there in the playoff discussion. And in today's college football, you saw this last year on Notre Dame's playoff run. If you're in the playoff discussion, you can maybe contend for a national title. I think this year they are similar to last year, and in some areas they can be even better. And if you have a national championship runner-up who is returning their team and can be even better, rating them at number 6 is fair. Obviously, they have a new quarterback that's going to be different, but if their quarterback is good, I think that amazing offensive line, I think as any team that has a good offensive line has a chance of being a good offense, and I think they have a really good receiving now. I'm very excited to see how Greathouse performs, along with Jeremiah Love, and the defense is going to be even better. They got that defensive line. They got one of the best secondaries in the country. If their secondary isn't injured and their defensive line is really good, I don't see them having any problem in the regular season. It's all going to depend on their quarterback. So they could be even better, they could be worse. Alabama has potentially one of the most talented defenses, a lot of good transfers on there, and they got a bunch of returning talent on there. I think that if their defense is locked down, then you can see how those Saban teams did in the past, even with a subpar offense. I think they'd at least maybe be in playoff contention. And as long as their offense isn't terrible, because I think their defense could be bad because there's some new faces, but if their defense lives up to the hype, they can obviously be up here contending. But I think 8 is maybe a little bit too high, but pretty appropriate because of their new quarterback, because of not much receiver depth outside of Ryan Williams. And it's going to come down to the offensive line. I think there's too many question marks with all these new pieces, new quarterbacks, new offensive line for me to be super high on them. LSU, I think, is really overrated. Sure, they have a good quarterback. Sure, their defensive line's really good. Sure, their secondary is really good. But it's not enough to make me feel like they're one of the best in the SEC, because for me to overlook their offensive issues and just rank them high based on their defense, every single facet of their defense would need to be super elite. And while their linebackers and defensive line are scary good, I feel like their secondary, it's good but not quite good enough for me to overlook their offensive issues. And they have a good quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, and a good running back, but the offensive line is not good. They have some new faces. I feel like a bunch of new faces colliding with each other is not going to be amazing. They lost 4 offensive linemen to the draft, and now it's going to be very inexperienced. And a team with a bad offensive line that has talent around them, oftentimes that made a difference. Ask Alabama from last year. And I also feel like their wide receivers aren't elite. LSU, if they had a bad offensive line but elite wide receivers like they had last year, I can maybe overlook it because their wide receivers can bail them out. But even though I do have Nick Anderson and they got a good returning receiver, I feel like outside of that, they don't have much depth, and all it takes is one injury and one underperformance because they don't have any elite transfers coming in to make it a subpar receiving core. And I think a team with this bad of an offensive line, I can't overlook it. Miami, I feel like they could be really good, but I feel like they also could take a step. I'm not the biggest fan of Carson Beck. If he makes interceptions again, kind of like he did SEC, it could be a problem, especially with a little bit of a stronger ACC this year. Now, if he is very good and maybe he plays better against weaker ACC competition, I could very well see this team being very good. But the wide receivers are good but not great. And the wide receivers, I feel like, is a question mark because even though they have a good offensive line, it's not like the best offensive line in the country. And if you're competing against Clemson for the ACC, I don't feel like it's going to be like good enough. And their wide receivers are underwhelming me. It's a very much the same team as last year, except maybe a little bit worse because they lose Cam Ward and they lose some of the receivers. And I'd maybe say that's fine. Maybe experience can make your team a little bit better if it wasn't for like their secondary. They add a bunch of new transfers in the secondary, but none of them stand out at me. And I feel like the secondary was last year, and I feel like their secondary is going to continue to struggle. And now you don't have Cam Ward to bail you out. I feel like it could be a recipe for disaster. Not a great receiving core for Carson Beck to work with. So I feel like everything could be overwhelming on him, and it all could come tumbling down. Now Clemson, I forgot to talk about Clemson. They could be ranked number 1. Usually I'm skeptical on how high they rate Clemson, but that defensive line's the best in the country. That defense is going to be so good. I think it can be good against SEC defenses because there's a lot of defenses on here that their defense is really good, but it's not the national level. No. Clemson's defense is so good that I think that's a top 15 rating alone for them just based off their defense. But they also got one of the only generally good elite quarterbacks. I feel like this is a very weak quarterback landscape in college football. With Kate Klubnik, that's going to be even better. They got a really good running back too, because a 1-2 running back quarterback punch is really good. And their offensive line got even better. I feel like part of the reason why I'm so high in Clemson is because their offensive line was good last year, but not one of the best. And this year they add on top of their great offensive line, and now it's going to be a Joe Moore Award contender. I feel like Clemson's so talented and elite on their offensive line and running back and quarterback that maybe a little bit of a weak skill position won't matter, kind of like the 2023 Michigan team. And again, they have an elite defense. I think if their defense can carry them throughout, and with a potential Heisman caliber quarterback, you just have too many good players, a very well coached team. I think this team could be very, very good. Illinois is a bit overrated. Sure, you got a bunch of players returning, and even with the expected improvement of a lot of returning guys, if all these guys couldn't even really sniff the college football playoff, even with an easy schedule last year, why do you think they can do it this year? And I feel like they didn't add enough transfers for me to be like, okay, now they're really good. I feel like they're being a bit overrated. They might get into the college football playoff, but I think they might get around 2 or 3 losses again. Still a very great job for Illinois, but I feel like they're not going to be amazing. I think South Carolina is a little bit overrated. I like Lenore Sellers. I like their offense, but their offense is not even one of the top 3 best in the SEC. Their wide receivers aren't amazing. Their offensive line struggled last year, and while it should return, there's no guarantee. And with a bad offensive line, that opens up for a potential for a bad offense. And their offense is the only thing keeping them rating this high. Their defense is going to suffer mightily. Sure, they got Stewart. He's very good on their defense. And they got some good linebackers. But other than that, they're one of the few teams in college football that really just regressed in every area of their defense. And their defense last year was part of the thing keeping them afloat. Now imagine a team that is for sure, I think it's going to be for sure a done deal that their defense is going to take a step back. Imagine a team where their defense takes a step back and they have a questionable offensive line with a tough schedule. I love Lenore Sellers, but I feel like this defense is going to be too bad. Michigan, it's all going to depend on Bryce Underwood. They mix of transfers and returning guys, which I like. They got a bunch of returning offensive linemen along with some transfers to fill in if their offensive line is not amazing. They got one of the best running back tandems in the country. Their defensive line could be even better this year. Their linebackers are really good, and they got some transfer secondary members. Now, if their secondary is not as good as last year, they do have some holes in there. I feel like it could warrant our ranking a little bit low, but I feel like the main thing holding them back from being a top 10 team is Bryce Underwood. I feel like it's a mixed bag. Last year could have been easily a playoff team if they had a good quarterback. If Bryce Underwood is as advertised, this could be a national championship contender. You heard it here first. But if not, I don't think the rest of their team, it's really good, but it's not good enough to carry a bad quarterback. And I think it's all going to depend on Bryce Underwood. I really, really like Florida. Jay Lagway, I love him. And it's not like South Carolina where he doesn't have a good returning field. No, they fixed up their issues from last year. I feel like with Lagway, they're always going to have a chance on offense. They have a decent offensive line again. It's a lot better. They got some transfers there. And now on defense, they're going to be even better. Caleb Banks is obviously there. They got one of the best defensive lines now. Their secondary returns. And I feel like if Florida, with this good of an offense and with so much of a hot streak that they had last year, I feel like if their defense even played a little bit better, that could have been a really good team. Now their defensive line is even better, and they return a lot of on defense. I can't see them pushing up to the top of the SEC, but I feel like Lagway is going to be really, really good for them. And if defense improves, which it has the potential to, they have a lot of good potential guys there. And with that good defensive line, I feel like as long as nothing collapses, I think it's going to be a very good year for Florida. Oklahoma, I feel like they're a bit overrated here. They got Jackson Arnold, I guess, but I don't know. They lost some wide receiver transfers. They did bring in some new stuff. I feel like it's too much transfer mixing. I know it's the new age of transfer college football, but I don't feel like they retained enough talent on their defense and offense to be made up by their transfer portalness. And again, they didn't add enough to make me feel like they're so much better than last year. Sure, they might be like a 9-win team this year and a 6-win team. But again, I just feel like there's too many holes in the team. The quarterback play really bothers me. I feel like their offense isn't explosive enough. Their defense could still be really good, but I feel like the offense isn't explosive enough. And I don't like their new quarterback. They shouldn't be too much different from last year. A&M is also overrated every year. Sure, they got Reed. Sure, they got a lot of transfer guys, but I feel like that defense, not much different than last year. They keep adding guys every single year. And this transfer class, even though it is really good, it's not even the biggest in comparison to their past hauls that they bring in the transfer portal. So if they're not even that in previous years, why would you expect them to be really good like this year too? And Michael Reed is really good. They have a shot, but I don't like Jimbo Fisher as a coach. I think they have too tough of a schedule, and the defense I think is too much of a question mark. The defensive line's good, but not that good. I feel like they're going to drop off. Indiana could again be really good. They did what they did. They got a bunch of new transfers because last year you gotta give them slack because it was just a bunch of new players playing together from James Madison. But I think this year, even though you do lose some guys, I feel like this year you have that same team last year, and you get arguably around the same haul of a transfer. And I think this team, it's still not national contenders, but I think they could be sneaky good as long as their quarterback performs. The offensive line's really good with Pat Coogan coming in from Notre Dame, and I think any team with a good offensive line can contend. You saw they lost to Notre Dame and all those good teams last year because of their offensive line kind of collapsing at some points. And I think their offensive line can contend with anyone in the country. And their defense might drop off a little bit from last year, which is why I still don't think they're going to do amazing in the top. But their defense was pretty good last year, though, and it doesn't seem to get too worse. So if they can stay around that talent threshold, and if maybe some of their new offensive talent can click, hey, maybe they'll go over the top. And Ole, again, they bring in a lot of talent every year. And if they bring in a lot of talent every year and they still can't get it done, with explosive wide receivers and Jackson Dart, why would I think they're going to be amazing with a new quarterback, not as good wide receiver hauls, and with a very skinned alive defensive line? They lose 4 linemen, and while you could say bring in a bunch of transfers, it was good but not an amazing transfer class. I feel like the defense is going to take a big step off, and with a new quarterback, I don't see them being very good. Tennessee, obviously, I think they could be pretty good too. But yeah, some teams, I think Nebraska could be really good. Really, really like their offense. And they got their defense can punch above their weight, which I think they got some sneaky guys that could on the transfer class. If their secondary can step up, I feel like bring their defense all together. And I think they have proven talent on offense to maybe be a little bit of a contender in the Big Ten. That will do it. Thank you guys for I'll come out with more content this week. Subscribe if you liked it. It really helps me out.